All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our ITEC webinar this evening, all about ChatGPT and exploring those potential pitfalls maybe of AI in education. So my name is Lynn Kleinmeyer. I am the ITEC president, but also a digital learning consultant for Grantwood AEA. And I'm going to kind of shift it over to my co-host, the co-host with the most, Mr. Andrew Fenstermaker.
Hey everyone, again, thanks for joining. Andrew Fenstermaker here. I serve alongside Lynn on the ITEC board, as well as serve as an innovation coach and instructional tech coordinator at Iowa City Schools. And to kick us off a little bit, I just wanted to ground us in a couple of things just to make sure that we're all kind of launching into this from the same frame of reference. So we kind of talked a little bit about the title of this is just ChatGPT potential and pitfalls. And so with that in mind, we're talking about AI as well too. And so in the spirit of using AI, I thought I would come up with the definition for AI. And initially I was like, what does ChatGPT say artificial intelligence was? And it was too smart for me. I couldn't understand half the words that they said. So I said, hey, since my third grader was asking what I get to do tonight, could you make it sound like a third grader was explaining it? So here is what we're talking about for artificial intelligence tonight. It is when computers do smart things like people and can learn, make decisions based on what they know. It can be used for things like talking to your computer or helping us drive cars. So that's exciting. So that's where we're coming at from AI. But I think what we're really here for is to really kind of dive into what's gained a lot of just interest was ChatGPT. And so just to kind of ground us for those that might be just entering the space, having heard of it, what is this system itself? What is this environment? So ChatGPT is a large language model developed by OpenAI. It's based on GPT 3.5 architecture. It is designed to generate human-like responses to text-based prompts, allowing it to engage in natural language conversation with users. ChatGPT has been trained on a vast amount of data from the internet and can provide information, answer questions, or simply chat about a wide range of topics. And so that was straight from ChatGPT, giving me what it actually is. For those of you that did experience some challenges with ChatGPT today, it was down for a little bit. So I was scrambling, waiting for it to come back online so that I could actually get that definition. So with that, we're going to go ahead and circle into having the great panelists that we have for us tonight introduce themselves. And so we'll start off, we're just going to go through alphabetical order, and we'll start off with Aaron.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Aaron Maurer here. I'm from Mississippi Bend AEA. I'm a STEM lead, also help with computer science and social studies. And this is right in my nerd utopia universe. So I'm excited to be with other people interested in this topic. Should I pass the baton on to Adam here? Sorry, I should have like popcorn red here. My bad.
It's all right. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Kurth, Director of Technology and Innovation with Iowa City Community Schools. In that role, I oversee our IT program. I also oversee our instructional technology program, data and research services, and AI and ChatGPT. AI has been really on my radar pretty heavily for the last few years, particularly ethical use of AI. And so then the current conversation over ChatGPT really arising is something that, you know, I'm tremendously interested in the conversation and also seeing where this takes us. I will pass it on to Melissa.
Hi, my name is Melissa Williams, and I am with Grantwood AEA. I'm a special education consultant now. In my previous teaching experience, I was a middle school teacher for students with IEPs. And so this whole ChatGPT has kind of really broadened and opened up my eyes and really excited me of the many possibilities that it could bring to classrooms and in my role that I serve now. And then Tammy.
Hi, my name's Tammy Lind. I'm an instructional coach in the Milwaukee area. So thank you for letting me, join the Iowans. I'm an instructional coach in the areas of kindergarten to 8th grade. I'm a former special educator. So that's really where I come from in this whole thing. I'm very excited about the potential for our students that need additional support and just moving them into that that level of independence that I think a lot of times they may not have. And so that's where I'm coming at this. I also am very interested about the challenges and just, I'm sure we'll get to it, but the whole idea of bias and other things that come up. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Sorry, Ren, I should have passed to you.
That's okay. I was on the ready. Hi, everyone. My name is Ren Hoffman. I am the professional development lead with an organization, a nonprofit called AI EDU, where we are focused on educational opportunities that excite and empower all learners around AI literacy. And so some of you I know from my role with the Iowa Department of Education, but I have a large focus around computer science and look forward to having this conversation with all of you tonight. And I will pass it to Zach.
Thanks, Ren. Hi, I'm Zach Mixdorf. I'm an innovation coach for the Linn-Mar School District, specifically at Linn-Mar High School. I look forward to the discussion as well, just because I've been playing around with AI in a multitude of different ways, and most people don't realize it, but they have as well. So I just look forward to the conversation and seeing where we can make some gains in this.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for our panelists of jumping on tonight and giving us some time to pick their brains and hear some conversation. As you saw earlier, I demoed an example of using ChatGPT to pare down language. And so that's one application that comes to mind, is just using the resource itself to adjust text complexity to kind of differentiate the text that we experience to make it more accessible for learners. I'll be curious to see how many times we say ChatGTP versus ChatGPT. And if you make a mistake, don't worry, because I know that I will as well. But I'm going to kick us off with the first question. We'll kind of jump in, whoever wants to kind of spearhead this question to start. I'm going to throw it in the chat as well, so everyone can see the first question. I'll go ahead and read it as well, but I'll throw it in the chat for everyone to see. So any of the panelists that want to kick this off, really what we're kind of curious about to start off is thinking about what some potentials, the ways that AI might actually enhance education from your lens. And so that's kind of where you're coming to this conversation at. And so whoever wants to kind of dive in, and then we'll just kind of jump around and have a kind of an organic conversation around this.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started. So, I think there are a million ways to answer this question, a million places to go, but I'll go kind of the direction that, thinking about how I use AI and ChatGPT, and how people within my department from a employee, from a work standpoint, use it. Oftentimes it's used to, really cut time off of some of kind of the lower order tasks that we're doing to get to the higher order work that we need to do, the higher order thinking that we need to do to really maximize, what we're able to accomplish. So I think about, for example, we may need to write a script. So I have a system administrator, they need to write a script to automate a task. Even just getting in and kind of thinking about and mapping out, what's the structure of the script going to be and what are all the components they need to think about, and then actually sitting down and write it. Maybe that would have been an hour task prior to ChatGPT or similar tools. But with ChatGPT, you can go and ask it, hey, write a script to do this thing for me. It'll write a starting point. That doesn't take out the requirement for expertise on the part of the user, whether that's a teacher developing a lesson plan, whether that's a student who's, attempting to work through, a project, whatever the case may be. The requirement for that expertise to analyze, to evaluate the work that ChatGPT did, and then to adapt it, whether it's, you asked for an outline and then you're taking it from there, whether it's you asked it for a script and then you need to tweak it and modify it and make sure it works for exactly how you want in your environment. But it gets you to that point that you're doing that work that requires higher competencies much more quickly than you might otherwise be doing. So ultimately, to me, it has the potential to introduce tremendous efficiency. And that efficiency, I think, can be leveraged both from a teaching standpoint and from a student, from a learning standpoint, to really, again, get to maybe some more important work or some more important learning more quickly.
I'll follow up on that. Adam, I love that because I think that's one of the areas that people really get concerned about is it going to stop them from learning? You know, is it going to are they going to stop doing the hard work? And that kind of brings me to one of the ways we've played with it at my organization. We've got some materials called AI challenges, and they are opportunities for kids to investigate ChatGPT on their own. And one of the ways we are saying, you know, hey, should go check this out, is to ask ChatGPT 4 questions. The first question is, ask it something you don't know much about, and then fact check it. Because ChatGPT has this has this air of authority about it. When it gives an answer, it just, well, of course I'm right. So let's check it. Let's use that information to learn, but let's check it. Let's fact check it. The second thing is have it explain something impossible. Like I asked it to, you know, how do you move a mountain? And of course, it came up with a very creative answer for me. We also ask it to do something shady. And so, you know, that could be write an email to your boss telling them they're doing a horrible job. And just to see the kind of language that it's producing. And then ask it to explain something you know a lot about. And again, fact check it. Was it right? Because if you're already an expert and it's, you know, measure what kind of information it's giving. And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about with ChatGPT is that it doesn't know everything. It will provide incorrect information. It will make things up. So one of the opportunities we have is to help teach students about digital literacy, to fact check, to check the work that they're being given.
Can I add to that, Ren? I love that. I love those questions. In fact, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to use those in school this week. So thank you for that. One of the things that we used it for, and we didn't really mean to, we're in the process of doing a social studies review, and in my state we have new social studies standards that are all focused on inquiry-based learning, and we're really hitting that really hard at my elementaries, and so we have a kind of a base level of what we're doing, but using, I'm just going to say chat because I'm going to say it wrong, so I'll just say chat. Using chat, we were able to then say, take these standards and this inquiry-based unit, and now give it to us at a 2nd grade level, and now give it to us at a 5th grade level. And so we're getting these returns, and we're reading them over just really more for ideas. We're not printing them out and using them as our you know, end all be all, but it really did open up a great discussion on differentiation and the things that we need to think about when we're differentiating for our kids. And it was just someone said, let's try it and see it. And so that we did that. Another thing that I had someone use it for was just instant translation of a letter of recommendation was instantly translated, which I found fascinating. And then we were looking for different ideas on some design challenges for our middle school kids. And so we just kept putting in, you know, design challenge focused on inquiry, design challenge focused on this. And then we would say, and now for 6th grade, and it would bring it down, and now for 3rd grade, and then it would bring it down. So we just kept hitting it and chatting with it to get continued responses at the levels that we were hoping to put into our conversation. So I really encourage using it. I love the efficiency. You were spot on with the whole idea of efficiency, Adam, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's the exciting thing for me. I think this is taking a lot of the minutia out of what happens on a day-to-day teaching situation and can just make us much more efficient at getting to working with kids and personalizing for kids in a way that we know we need to do. It's just been difficult time-wise. So I'll pass on to someone else.
Tammy, I'm going to piggyback off of you a little bit, and I'm thinking in the mindset of special education teacher making modifications or accommodations and things like that to student work. When you're talking about all the extra stuff that's going on, the thought process and all that stuff. I just need something simplistic so that I can get my own ideas generated. So like asking it to write an outline, pros and cons versus peanut butter versus jelly, or give me an outline for a 5-step process for how to fly a kite. Random things like that, that would just a very simplistic outline, then could give it to the student, or the student can use then to continue to generate those ideas and to elaborate more off of that. And a lot of like my old school accommodations, I would give a student a sentence starter, or I would give them a word bank of that has phrases at the beginning of this, once upon a time blank. But then if they have this outline that they have their ideas and their thoughts, that they're generating the parameters of what they want to talk about. The chicken nugget with the hot sauce at the bicycle, and it could give some random, but they could come up with a really creative piece of writing. So I think taking that additional executive functioning, like all of that thing out of the kid who may struggle, and just giving it a very simplistic, I think that's one great way to have that accommodating piece.
I think just as a lot of the ideas are being shared here, and they're so good. So I'm trying to think of like what else could I say that hasn't been shared. I think one of the key things that I'm going to look at it from a different perspective of the initial fear that a lot of people have right now in terms of AI and education, and it's kind of shaking the pillars of the education institution, not necessarily the people in there, but the institution itself. And I think one of the key things to remember as we think about applications for educators, for our leaders, for anybody involved in the education system, higher ed, K-12, is that it's not about replacing human thinking. And I think that is where the core of a lot of fear comes from, this cheating, the plagiarism, insert your buzzword of panic for DOK level 1 prompts that you've been able to get by with obedience and compliance for a long time versus deeper learning. The AI is here to augment the learning. And it's not about helping you do less work. It's not about you doing more work. It's about helping you do better work. And I think if, there's another buzzword, and I like it, but I also kind of detest buzzwords like this prompt engineering. Like we have to know how to interact with these tools, and it comes back to a nerdy 1950s Army mathematician, garbage in, garbage out, or rubbish in, rubbish out, depending if you're UK or American. And if we don't know how to use the tools, you're going to get garbage. And I think that's where a lot of the flack is coming in, and so I'll put here in the chat, I don't know if you have it up or not, but just like a sample prompt kind of going after what a lot of people are kind of talking about. And I think the key here is not just for the adults, but also for students to teach them, like there's a lot of different models depending on who you like to follow and what books you want to buy and things of that nature. But basically, like, you have to prepare, right? So as an educator, or if you're going to teach your students how to use this, because ChatGPT is now down to age 13. So if you're looking at banning, originally it was age 18 2 weeks ago. So it was really easy for districts to ban. But then they changed it because they are $1 billion entity and they're burning through cash and they need people using it. So it's 13. It's just a matter of time before it becomes compliant. It's valued at just a soft 29 billion. But as we think about that, is you have to prepare. You have to know what results you want and before you start using that. There's a concept that's been around since the test of time of all of education, right? What are the outcomes we want to achieve? Then there's the interaction piece, which I think for a lot of people, if you haven't used it, it is a chat bot. And I think it's not like a Google search where you put in a prompt and you wait for stuff. Like, you engage in conversation. You can continue to talk to it, so to speak, until you get the desired effect that you want. And I think in the last part, as you're thinking about it from an education lens, is that continuation piece. And I think that's the part that gets lost as we think about plagiarism and cheating, is it'll give you stuff, like Ren said, it might be accurate, it might be inaccurate, it doesn't matter. But that continuation, that's the human element, where we refine the words, we challenge the response, we're using the human elements to augment what's been provided to then take that to that next level. And I think there's some real powerful stuff there. And like, so I gave you a sample prompter in the chat, and if you were to use ChatGPT and put that in there, it'll give you some math stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't know squat about trigonometry. My wife's an algebra teacher. She could probably tell you if it's right or wrong. I don't know. But what I could do is follow up with a question here and say, you know what, but I want you to explain this. And then it'll go through and explain that it's thinking to that. So I'm thinking about the value for students that maybe don't have access to $40 an hour tutors after school at the library when mom and dad buys their kid a coffee to go get, brushed up on their math. I think about the kids that maybe were on spring break and don't travel. They can plug in, you can plug in a rubric to ChatGPT and then turn in your work, and ChatGPT will grade your work against the rubric. You can get real-time feedback. You can do these things to not cheat the system, but to enhance the learning that we're going after. And this will kind of get into question two. There's some real things to be thinking about in terms of equity and gaps if we're not careful between the haves and have-nots when it comes to how to use AI, let alone having access to it.
Yeah, I'll round this out then, and definitely, I think he started to Aaron, thanks, started to touch on some of the ways that I think this could be a really powerful tool. He talked about I can use a rubric and score it. I also think about that from a teacher perspective. If this can become a more and more refined item, where not necessarily, again, we can't take the human element out. I mean, a calculator is a very simple form of AI in some way for me, that it is automatically calculating a number for me. Do I know if that's an accurate number? I have to know that. And so again, I heard Adam talk about putting in scripts. I have yet to put in a script that works the first time without any editing. I have just tried over and over to be as simple as possible, and it's almost never able to do what I want it to do the first time. And obviously that goes to the point of this AI technology is the weakest it will ever be. And so we have to understand that as this continues to progress, we, again, just like a calculator, need to learn how to use that technology in our classrooms effectively. I think about in an English classroom where a high school teacher has to grade 40 papers, 80 papers, 100 papers, whatever the number is. And without constant feedback along the process to those students, you're going to be burning yourself out anyways. You want to know what that paper is doing when it's coming now, ahead of time. And so even the ability to make now my time with students more focused. I can sit with 5 kids and know that all 24 other kids are using ChatGPT to round out their essay. What's wrong with this according to this rubric? Well, it doesn't say necessarily what it should put. And if you do specifically ask that, you're going to know your students, because you are going to know that what type of a writer they are to begin with, probably based on some of those smaller writings they do. The other thing is, now I am able to, even with version history, things like that in Google, you can tell immediately when something has been copied and pasted. This is just a newer form of cheating. My teacher in keyboarding used to walk around and hit Control V just to check if I pasted it from somewhere else. So this is something that can be going on for a long time. And I just see a lot of opportunity. I start to see it where, more as I'm a math teacher, a kid can come up, put his paper underneath and scan, tell him right away which runs are wrong. And he says to me, I have number 6 wrong. Can you help me? I just took away 5 of 6 problems already, because the AI generator knew right away it was right. And it says, just check number 6 with this kid.
Yeah, as I sit here listening, I mean, like, I'm just soaking in all of these ideas and thinking about, so much of what you've shared is this idea that it's a launching point. I'm a former ELA teacher, and so I'm perfectly capable of constructing a piece of writing on my own. But let's be real. Sometimes, I mean, it's like any other ability to customize for yourself and for your learning experience. There's times where I need that launching point. I need that space to scaffold myself as a writer, and to then, like you've already said, customize and be able to kind of begin to humanize and add my own voice back in. But I needed that starting point. And I think about the scaffolds for parents as well, to help and support your own children. I think about it multiple perspectives. I also have a child who struggles with writing, and we are in the midst of scholarship application season. So using it as a launching point for him, or even for myself, as I think, Aaron, you were mentioning you were not a math guy. You know what? Guess what? Me neither. I'm a former reading teacher. And so like being able to help my own children and put into ChatGPT and like, can you explain this to me, please, so that I can kind of make sense and, start going through it. I mean, yeah, so all of these pieces, and that there's real potential here. There's also a part of me as an ELA teacher that, kind of thinks about those spaces that maybe we need to be very mindful and intentional of how we are scaffolding ourselves, but also our students to use that. So I'm going to kind of transition us into that question. I feel like we maybe kind of have started to hit on this a little bit, but in the chat, kind of the second question that I'm going to lob to our amazing panelists here. What are some things in your mind that we need as educators, as parents, as humans, to be mindful of or intentional about when we're thinking about the integrating the various AI components in specific ChatGPT? So I'm going to see if anybody's willing to hop in on that one.
If it's all right, I'll just go ahead and start this time out, I guess. I kind of finished talking about how beneficial this can be to teachers and helping them improve the way their practice is. And I also stated how much it has to be human checked as well. I have been turned on to this product or this app called Curipod, which I'll put that into the chat. And Curipod gives teachers a really great start on kind of an interactive PowerPoint presentation to use with their students. And it's interesting. I've put in multiple things and it is pretty accurate, but sometimes the images in the background don't match correctly. They have social justice in it, and I'm talking about math, which there is some math. There is math in social justice. Don't get me wrong, but in that slide or that presentation, I was not trying to push that agenda or talk about that at that time through that contextual learning. I might have been just introducing a topic. So it will give me some of those starting points just to go back to that. But at the same time, just over and over, I can't stress enough how much fact check there has to be. We have to understand that AI is built on human past. They are working on obviously more things, quantum mechanics, things like that will, possibly take AI to a whole new level that's insane to try to comprehend even. But right now, I think I'll leave some of those other topics that came up that I thought were spot on. My big thing is that teachers can use this as a big tool. Students can use it as a great tool, but it will need that expertise and really needs to be looked through finely. If you're worried about cheating, then definitely you're going to need to add things like checking version history for documents. You're going to want to know some of those tools that will scan a document to find if this possibly was written by AI, which aren't great, but there are those AI checkers that there are checks within it. But again, if a kid is going in and changing what AI has written and done some of those things with, there's a lot that things can be looked in a positive way, and obviously some of those wrenches are in there that we have to work through as it develops.
I think when I think about pitfalls and things to be mindful of, again, lots of places to go. One thing that comes to mind is what to me is kind of an interesting dichotomy of sorts, where one of the pitfalls of the current generation AI that's being used in ChatGPT, I think it's like version 3.5, is, as was mentioned by a couple of folks in response to the previous question, it has supreme confidence in answers that are just wrong. I remember I put in, something simple, like I was playing with one of my daughters, big Iowa basketball fan, and I asked it to write a biography of Caitlin Clark, and its knowledge goes up to 21. It just made a bunch of stuff up. It said like she was a pro basketball player and all these, like it just made things up, but it presented it very confidently. And that's something that, especially for students, but really for anyone interacting with it, but especially students, they have to be cognizant of that. And that's a tremendous opportunity to be able to teach that and to teach the human component of the process of reviewing what AI generates. But it's also a pitfall. To me, kind of the paradox, though, is that as AI gets better, my understanding is that for version 4 of ChatGPT dramatically reduces instance of inaccurate statements being made and that sort of thing. Apparently it's still, you're able to walk it into situations where it'll do that, but it'll do it far less frequently. However, as that happens, suddenly the opportunity for misuse by the user, whether that's having it generate something that will then be submitted directly, or if I'm a teacher, just having it grade my students' work and just taking that without any review on my part, the chance for that increases. And so I think as AI progresses, it probably will present even more of a challenge in terms of how do you manage, I'm going to say plagiarism. I'm not sure it's exactly plagiarism because ChatGPT is not a person. You're not stealing someone else's ideas. You might be stealing the product of someone else's work, however. But, it increases the chance that that becomes an even more serious concern. Real quick, I just do want to add, since, my role is at least in large part on the operational IT side, I feel pretty strongly about not blocking a resource like ChatGPT at the school. I have the ability to tomorrow block it on our network, block it on all school district owned devices. Not going to do it. And one of the big reasons there is equity. Ultimately, we spent half an hour talking about the important opportunities that this platform, among other AI infused platforms, can provide to students and to teachers and others. And if we block it on district network, if we block it from district devices, we're creating an uneven playing field, because the students who have their own internet access at home, their own devices at home, suddenly have access to a resource that's a pretty powerful resource that other students don't have access to. And so that, to me, creates a tremendous equity concern. So ultimately, working within the world within which we exist, not trying to create artificial barriers to something that I think is going to be, a major paradigm shift, both in education and more broadly. It already is, let's be honest. AI has already created tremendous paradigm shifts, but this is maybe one of the more visible ones. So I think a few pitfalls, but also, again, some opportunities that can be leveraged there.
I was going to say, kind of piggybacking off of that, and then what had been shared earlier, with the mindset of a teacher, kids need a model. Kids need to have an experience to learn. And so if we have all these awesome things out there for kids to use, and they can access it in their own or wherever they're getting these access points from, if they don't know how to use it in an appropriate, productive manner, then that's when things go bad. And if we get ahead of it and teach them how to appropriately use them and how these avenues can be beneficial to help them expand and grow and learn and things like that, they will be better off than if they kind of go navigate it themselves as a as a child. And if we can help, maybe not lead them, but walk with them as they're exploring and discovering, and be there to kind of model and help. And I've worked with students on the autism spectrum, and I've always used the phrase like intercepting those social interactions that are so hard to understand for some people that just don't quite see things, or the body language and things like that. This is a very invisible language that if you're typing something in and if you're not understanding what is being said, they need someone there to support and kind of do that interception of, this is what this means, and let's make it this way, or let's type in this command so that it says we want a different outcome. If they don't have that support, then they're not going to be able to learn it as efficiently and productively as if they did.
I really like that, Melissa. Thank you for, and Adam, even for your comments about blocking it. And I want to, I guess, jump in on both of those and say, there are schools that have blocked it, and they have their own reasons. Though I agree with Adam that I think we really need to be thinking about who has access and what kind of divide we're perpetuating. But I think the other part of that is some schools need a pause. They need to be able to take a moment to think about, what is this? What are we going to do with it? And be able to approach it mindfully. And so I think, we don't want to prevent our students from using it, but let's have a plan. So there's a lot of districts that don't have that, answer yet. So Melissa, to what you were saying, for the teacher that says, but I don't understand AI, how can I teach them? And I think you hit it right on the head and said, you know what, if the kids know more than you do, they know more than we do about so many things, right? But we can guide them. We can guide the conversation. We can be that adult model on the side to help guide the conversation. There are resources out there to support teachers. There's folks like Erin and myself who and anyone on this panel, anyone on this call, I'm sure would be willing to help connect you to someone who has answers. And I think that's one of those areas where we can lean in, is that this is new for all of us, right? I mean, Erin just dropped in the chat that it's been around for decades, but ChatGPT kind of went, people weren't thinking about it. And so now all of a sudden we're starting to question ChatGPT, but there are so many things we need to be questioning. ChatGPT is just one piece of AI. We said this was really about maybe AI even broader, but there are things out there that we as educators need to really think about, like, deep fakes and AI generated voice. And there's all these things that have the potential to do so many great things, but we need to figure out our fear and figure out how we can get over our fear, because I think our own fear about this is going to be something that's going to prevent, that isn't in our students' best interests. And so I want to encourage those of you that are, excited and interested about this, don't stop at this conversation, because we have a mission and a passion to support our students. And so don't let this be the thing that stands in your way.
I could throw in my 2 cents worth, if it's even worth that. I think I've been having lots of these conversations with people, and sometimes just make people upset, and the goal isn't that. But I think there's a couple of things I think in mind is we think about things to be mindful of, and there's a whole slew of stuff. We can get into ethics and what people are getting paid to scour the prompts and the responses, and just treatment of people, and all the stuff that are way beyond our capacity for our call tonight. But I think it's important to be cognizant of. But I would push back to, and I'm going to push the education system as a whole here. This is not a finger point or blame on the people in the system. So I do want to put that caveat out there. But I do want to say, I think the pillars have been shaken. And to me, it's exciting. I see tools like ChatGPT as an opportunity to finally do the things that we have been talking about for decades, of what we know works and is needed for kids, and yet we find ways to still not do the things that we know work, because the system puts so many barriers in place. And not that that becomes an excuse, but it is also the reality of, yeah, we can tell a teacher to differentiate, but if a teacher's seeing 200 kids a day, how in the world does one do that? Like that's, let's we can have some real talk there. I think tools like AI are a collaborator to help us work through some of these things. It is not a silver bullet that's going to solve those things. With that, I will throw two things out here. One, that I think that if an assignment can be completed by ChatGPT, it should be. If we have an opportunity to be with kids in person, face to face, and we saw the ramifications of what happens when we are not with people in a human environment interacting, what are we doing with that invaluable time one-on-one in a small group, in a whole class with kids to be able to make a difference? And if we're going to spend 80% of our time doing DOK level 1 work, we're wasting time to build those connections, to build the opportunities and stuff. And if ChatGPT is going to allow us to expedite that, knock that down to 30% so we can get into the DOK levels of 3 and 4, by all means, let's pony up and let's finally get rid of just keeping kids in rows and doing stuff with obedience because we're scared as the adults. So it comes back to attitude. And I think, unfortunately, as a teacher, if you can be replaced by an algorithm, maybe you should be. And I know that's not the right thing to say when we can't even find like warm bodies to even fill a classroom, but the opportunities to learn and to put our head in a hole and not look at what's happening, the disruptions here. Every industry sector in the world is embracing these tools. They're not shying away from it. And education loves to shy away from it. And we're going to spend so much time talking about, well, what about cheating? And what about plagiarism? We're never going to win that game. We're never going to win that game. I mean, I just had this the other day and someone was talking about how Turnitin just upgraded their AI stuff. Great. Hoorah. And it has an accuracy rate of 30%. Actually, I typed in a thing that I wrote myself and it said it was fake. I wrote it 10 years ago, so it wasn't fake. It's my words. That's how inaccurate these tools are, but they need to make money and they're going to get better, just like ChatGPT is going to get better. But then you can sit there, if you're on TikTok, and here's a trending video of college kids showing you how to use another tool called Quill that will take your ChatGPT prompts. It'll remove all the words to bypass all the systems. So let's not waste our energy on these things that we think are so monumental for learning and figure out how to work with it. We have kids that still don't even know how to use a search engine tool, search box properly to get information, let alone how to use an AI toolbox. So this brings back our digital literacy skills. It brings back our media literacy skills. We start thinking about fake news and things like that. We're going back to things that have been around forever, but how have we truly implemented it with authenticity and inquiry, and bring this back to the fold, use this as a lever and not as a thing to go, oh my gosh, like this is going to be the end of all my teaching. And a lot of times that fear comes from, as we all know, where does fear come from? Like not understanding. So usually when I get those emails, I've been getting a lot of them, I say, have you used the tool? And the answer is, well, no. I'm like, well, maybe you should use the tool because I bet you'll start using it every single day of your life as you're angry typing maybe to a parent and you need to say, hey, I need to write this to be a more engaging way to a parent, but it needs to be thought-provoking, it needs to push, but it needs to be respectful, and it'll do it. And then you twist your words and you throw it into your Google inbox, and guess what? Now Google has AI built into their email, and it's going to give you suggestions. Or if you're a Microsoft person, if you haven't seen Copilot, holy cow, get ready for that because it'll do all the work for you, and then you clean it up. So I just think it's attitude and mindset. To me, those are some of the things to be mindful of, is to not be so resistant to it. I'm not saying jump overboard into the deep end and say it's the greatest thing ever, because it's not that either. There are a lot of pitfalls that still need to be navigated, but we can't afford to not prepare our kids to know how to handle these tools because they're going to figure it out on their own. So I don't know if you're really nerdy, and I'll be quiet so I don't hog the air here, but like OpenAI just partnered with Snapchat. So OpenAI is a company of ChatGPT. Kids are using it. And if you don't like Snapchat and you don't like AI, then don't be upset when they figure out how to be tenfold ahead of you when they're doing it all day, every day. So we got to get on board. We got to embrace it, work with it, and help our kids because it's not going anywhere. And I'll get off my soapbox.
How am I supposed to follow that, Aaron? Yes, yes to that. You're over here, so yes to that. I just want to reiterate the whole idea of equity. And as we think about blocking this, and I can tell you, in my area of my state, we have also had these big conversations. I do think we are, when we venture down that path, we really are setting up inequitable use of technology. And we just came out of a pandemic where we really had to talk about equitable use of digital tools and equitable access. And I would hate to see us going back to that. One of the other things that is in the back of my mind with this is the whole idea of bias, and the whole idea that, ChatGPT and AI are pulling and learning from what you're putting into it. And it's only pulling from a finite amount of data at this point. As it grows and grows, it'll get bigger and learn more. But I worry about bias. If you're constantly working from a potential bias as you're working with ChatGPT, it's going to continue to return answers to your questions about that same bias. And I want to come back. I think, Zach, you started us off and you talked about the whole idea just about fact checking, and it's got to be done, and you've got to take the time to do it. Yes, efficiency and being able to differentiate are such powerful ways to use this, but you also have to use those digital literacy skills of being able to communicate information, create. You need to be able to fact check what you get back. And I don't want us to lose that, because somebody mentioned that you can steer it to the results that you want, which is a great thing when you're looking for resources to teach with, which is not a great thing when you're trying to avoid bias in what you're looking at. So I just want to always, move forward with that caution of equity and bias. Those are the things that are kind of jumbled around in my mind as we get further, and as ChatGPT 4 is out and it gets better and bigger, and as it gets broader, and Curipod as well, as teachers are beginning to use AI more and more.
Yeah. And I think just piggybacking off of, that idea of the fact that, as Arian just dropped in, that data lake is constantly growing, and helping our kids understand, or even for us as adults, that again, ChatGPT is pulling from information that's out there. My teacher librarian hat, I can't ever take that off fully. And that is something that I wish, obviously, while mining that data lake, you're pulling from all of these things that once you find it from so many spaces, you end up thinking, okay, well, then this must just be general knowledge. But I feel like there's still a concern of knowing where that information is coming from, and going back to what you were saying, Tammy, about like having that bias, and where is this information, and how can we, again, develop those information literacy skills to help kids and again, ourselves as adults, as we embrace this and kind of figure out what this means for us, to identify where are these data sources coming from, and what was the intent. And when you think about the author's intent and all of those kinds of pieces, that there's still that need for that conversation. The other piece too that I think I would be remiss in not mentioning is, as we're thinking about, putting things in to be graded and checked for us, or even students putting information into this data lake, and being very, very careful about the student data and privacy pieces of putting that information, and then potentially having some of that information kind of become part of a bigger piece of information that gets pulled from. So with that segue, we've had a couple people asking some questions directly in the chat. And so as I scroll back through, we did have a question in regards to the panel. If any of your districts, and maybe Adam, you can maybe speak to this a little bit, about updating any of the acceptable use policies or anything like that in regards to ChatGPT.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one quickly. We have not updated our AUP or any other policy documents, in part because, at this point, well, two things. One, we've tried to craft our AUP and other policies in ways that are not geared towards specific technologies. So the idea is that we really don't want to be responding to every single new thing that comes out. We want to craft policies that can be applied sort of universally. And so I don't know that we will, implement AI specific policies. Maybe we will. I can't see where this goes exactly, down the road. But we have had discussions about, a district position. And at this point, our district position is to provide information, try to educate our teachers and ultimately our students as it relates to AI platforms broadly, but not necessarily to craft restrictions or things like that. It feels premature to begin to do that outside of maybe specific classroom environments, and then really teachers have a lot of latitude.
I think the other question that kind of came up, and Adam, thank you for jumping in on that. Nothing like you putting you on the spot. But the other question that kind of came up, obviously, it's been a little bit of an evolution, specifically in regards to ChatGPT, that it was 18 and now it's down to 13. But building capacity for our students, at what age should we start teaching some of the pieces that would scaffold and help our kids move to that success rate when they are 13 and officially able to use it? Even though I say that, and we all know that kids find a way. I have my biases, but I'm curious. Thoughts, friends, on when to start teaching these kinds of thought processes?
I am just going to come through a parent mindset at this point. My husband is very, very comfortable in the tech world, and I have gone to him with concerns that I have with my own children. I have a 10-year-old and a going to be 12-year-old, and they see people, their friends are on social media, like things like that. They have access to all these things. Going back to that digital literacy and how to be a digital citizen is absolutely critical. So when should they start? As soon as they get a device in their hand. Myself, our kids have always had a screen available to them. We have that privilege. And so my whole thought was, we're going to block it. We're going to put all these filters in so that they can't access it. That only works so in my bubble. When they go out into the world and when they go out with their friends or when they're at somebody else's house, then they have access to all these things. So this is my husband speaking to me now, is that we need to teach my specific children, my own children, I need to teach them how to navigate this digital world in a way so that they can stay safe and they can be comfortable. And if they come across something that makes them feel uncomfortable or unsafe, they need to know how to access somebody to help them, because of it's a world that is so big that I don't even know that I've ever come to the ends of it. And so I would say all of these tools, all of these technology things, yes, it's scary because you have your digital natives and your digital the ones that grew up without it, and it's a new world for a lot of people. But if we can teach our kids how to stay safe and what to do when they come into an area of the world where it's uncomfortable, then they will continue to stay safe.
I think looking at your question, Lynn, just the age to teach them about AI, I think kind of like what Melissa was saying, we kind of have wrapped, our kids in my district have had devices, they start at 4K and 5K and up. So we're really starting those conversations of digital literacy, digital safety, digital citizenship at those ages. Honestly, I think our kids are experiencing AI way more than we think they are. I'm just going to put it out there. I think, sixth grade today, we're talking about it. We were doing some VR stuff and AI came up and they're like, oh, I've got it on my gaming system. And they're going through and they're talking about, it does it for me. I don't have to do anything. It asks me and I tell it. And so I think if we're afraid about introducing this, it's done already. Like, it's been introduced. Our job now is to really talk with kids about how to manage this in a safe way, and how to really understand what it means and where it might be headed, and make our best guess. But if we're thinking that we're like the keepers of the knowledge of AI and going to depart this to our kids, we're already 50 steps behind.
Yeah, my son's 7. He loves watching the map app as we drive. I didn't have to go and put a highlighter on a map anywhere. I just told it where I wanted to go. And then it told me how long it was going to take, what the best route was, which one's eco-friendly. And so my son likes to tell me how long it is.
Well, I appreciate all of the insights from our panelists. I would love to continue this conversation. I'm learning all sorts of new things to be mindful of as I get excited about the potentials, but also additional things to be thinking about in regards to bias and equity and some of those pitfalls that might exist in diving deeper into leveraging AI. One of the things that ITEC is really trying to do is amplify and connect Iowa educators. And to that, Tammy, we are adopting you as an Iowa friend as well. With that said, we know that there's going to continue to be great conversation around AI, ChatGPT, the other ecosystems that are starting to embed that, such as Microsoft and Google. With that said, one of the things we're really interested in, and I'm going to throw a link into the chat, is a Google form. And this is not something you have to fill out. We're just curious, and we're kind of teasing around this idea of potentially starting a Google group around this topic. Just really, how do I connect with someone just to bounce an idea off of and pick their brains a little bit? And so just kicking around the idea right now, but just looking to gauge some interest, so that the chat now has a Google form in there. Again, it's not required, but if you do want to express interest in potentially connecting on the Google group to just kind of engage in dialogue at a future date a little bit more, just kind of asynchronously. Again, we're just kind of kicking that idea around. With that said, we are nearing the end of our time. We appreciate everyone jumping on tonight. We especially appreciate our panelists and all the great insights that they brought into this conversation. You will be receiving a follow-up email communication from us. And in that email, we'll include the links that we had in the chat, as well as we've put together some additional resources. You'll receive a link to a Wakelet collection that will include not only the links that were in the chat, but also some additional resources. With that being said, again, thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for all of you for attending. We look forward to continued additional webinars in the future from an ITEC organization. So with that, have a great rest of the evening, and we look forward to connecting again.